Merchant with American Nomad News. Hello, this is a comparative religion segment. What I have here is a copy of the Qur'an which is meant for students. And it basically follows the translation of Abdullah Yusuf Ali. And I'm going to attempt to read the transliteration, which I have practiced with people who actually know how it's meant to be pronounced. I have not practiced very much of the Quran. This is just a small piece that I have. And it's a prayer that is said, or it's a surah that is said in every prayer that a Muslim prays. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Malik Yawmuddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim ghairil maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Now, my pronunciation, or tajweed as it's called, is really not very good from what I understand. Equally, I do not actually read Arabic. It is a language that I have attempted to understand and is actually not really that hard to learn, but it's difficult for me to find a teacher. I'm going to read the translation as it's written here in this copy of the Quran. Fatiha, or the opening chapter. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, praise be to Allah, the cherisher, sustainer of the worlds. Most gracious, most merciful, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those on whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath, and who go not astray. Now, I'd like to point out some things that I think are pretty interesting about this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. This is an invocation. This is calling upon the God, which is actually how Allah translates. I found out that in Arabic written copies of the Bible in the Middle East, when it comes to the statement the God, which you see in the Bible, it's written Allah, because that's how you say that in Arabic. That's what that means, the God. Bismillah. Bismi is in the name of, or for the sake of, is how it's translated in those ways. So you're making an invocation. You're calling upon the God. Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim are two of what we call the 99 names of Allah. It's a very similar concept that I found out comes from Hebrew, where there are names of God, and they're basically characteristics of God. They're not physical things like the biggest or the smallest or the skinniest or the tree or the rock or any of those kinds of things. They're not nouns. They're pronouns, I guess, but they're really descriptive. They're character traits. They're intellectual, conceptual, spiritual things. And then it says, Alhamdulillahi. Now, this one translates as praise be to Allah. But that doesn't actually strike me as quite the impression that I got from other things. And it also is not, bismi Allah is not the same thing as Alhamdulillahi. As I understand, Lillahi means the God worthy of worship. And Alhamdu is usually translated as thankfulness in some form. All thanks to Allah. All thanks to the God worthy of worship. Rabbil Alameen. Now, this says the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. But the way Rabb was explained to me is kind of like the boss, like the guy that takes care of everything, right? And the master of all the worlds, of all the realms. There's different translations, and if you read all of those different translations, they give you a better perspective of how these things are received by the different translators, how they look at them, how they think they mean. And I'm getting a mosquito. I'm going to wave this thing around and get rid of that mosquito, because he's going to... Did I get him? That's a little... I don't know what it is, but it's not a mosquito. What is that? Something. He's a little something. You gonna crawl on that? Okay. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. I'm not sure whether I'm actually saying that correctly. Let me take a look over here. And it says... Ar-Rahmanir and Rahim. And that's different than that up there. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. I get the impression that somewhere they're supposed to be different, because I've seen it translated as the most beneficent, the most merciful. And that's where this stuff comes in, right? If you really learn that, then you can tell whether that and that is really actually accurate. And a guy walking along with a stick. I totally understand. People screw with you enough, you start carrying a stick. But at a certain point, you learn you can take a stick away. And that's when they really quit messing with you. Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Maliki. Okay, this says master of the day of judgment, but Malik is the word for king. And Maliki is the word for, and you can see that right there. Maliki. It obviously says Maliki. Okay. Now, Malik is king. That's Arabic for king. And Maliki is the ultimate form of that word, the king. Like, that's the badass who is the king. And there ain't nobody other else that's anywhere near him. Right? That's the absolute is what Maliki means. Now, so I've also seen the translation where it says the king of our day of judgment. Our day of judgment. So, really, that's different than what this book is. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. That's fairly accurate from what I've seen from other translations. Now, this says, show us the straight way, but I've also seen it set us on the path of your reward and not the path of your punishment. And then you get into waladdaleen, which basically means those who are lost or who go astray. So that's Al-Fatiha. And I'm 10 minutes in on this recording. So I want to make a final statement on comparative religion. Translation is a messed up thing. It is really tough to interpret translations. The original words that are presented are really important to understand, but over time, language changes. Arabic is like the most preserved language in the world. And even here, you can see, if you go look up Abdullah Yusuf Ali, if you look up, what's his name? I can't think of it. If you go on and look up different translations of the Quran and go through it, you're going to see a lot of parts of it are different, especially in the new modern translations, which really disturbs me, that like Khan. I did not like to see that Khan was dramatically changed in his translation. And it occurs to me that everything that was done to try and steer stuff away from the true meaning of the Quran is done with the Bible and with any other written thing in history that's of any use to anybody. There's a certain contingent of the world that the Quran actually tells us about that wants to steer people wrong, wants everything to be a lie, wants to trick everyone into failure. And it's that we should fight against. It's that we should avoid. It's that we should rail against every time we see it. In ourselves, in our own tendencies, and in others. May God bless you with all the truth. Bless all of you with the truth and guide you and forgive us all. Alhamdulillah. Good day.